I never thought my own daughter-in-law could stoop so low as to kick me, her vicious heels smashing into my leg at a Scottsdale gala, snarling, "Hand over your house keys, you worthless old hag." The dessert table shattered, my cane skidded across the floor, and 150 guests stared in stunned horror as my heart screamed in agony, ripped apart by betrayal so deep it felt like my soul was bleeding out. I never thought my own blood could betray me like this. But there I was, Eleanor Brooks, 70 years old, crumpled against the shattered dessert table at the Desert Rose in Scottsdale, my leg throbbing from Megan Carter's brutal kick. The pain wasn't just physical, it was a dagger to my soul, carved deeper by the sight of my son, James, standing frozen, his eyes glued to the marble floor as if I didn't exist. "You're too old to need a house this big, Eleanor." Megan's voice sliced through the stunned silence of 150 guests, her manicured nails jabbing the air. "Hand over the keys, or you'll regret it." Her words dripped with venom, her designer dress gleaming under the chandelier like a predator's armor. For years, I'd lived quietly in my 3,000-square-foot Scottsdale home, a place filled with memories of my late husband, David. I worked part-time at a used bookstore, drove a 1-2-year-old sedan, and wore clothes from thrift stores not because I had to, but because I chose to. To Megan, I was just a frail old woman, a burden clogging her dreams of luxury. But she didn't know the truth I'd hidden for decades. James, my only son, just stood there, his tie perfectly knotted, his face blank, letting his wife tear me apart. "James, say something," I pleaded, my voice cracking. He didn't even look up. That betrayal hurt worse than the kick, worse than anything I'd ever felt. How did it come to this? It started 2 years ago, when Megan first stepped into my home, her eyes scanning every corner with a hunger I didn't yet understand. That brutal moment at the Desert Rose, when Megan Carter's heel crashed into my leg and her vicious demand for my house keys rang out before a stunned crowd, wasn't the beginning of my suffering. It was the boiling point of a calculated campaign that started 2 years ago. The pain of her kick was nothing compared to the slow poison of her words, seeping into my life, drop by drop, until I could barely recognize myself. It began the first time Megan stepped into my Scottsdale home, her eyes raking over every corner with a hunger I was too naive to name. When James first brought Megan to meet me, I saw the flicker of disdain in her perfectly made-up face. She strode in, her designer heels clicking like a predator stalking prey, and scanned my living room, the worn leather couch where David and I used to read together, the faded curtains we'd hung with love, the oak bookshelf brimming with dog-eared novels from my bookstore job. "This place could use a serious update," she said, her laugh sharp as broken glass. "Don't you ever get tired of all this clutter, Eleanor?" Her words were wrapped in a smile, but they cut deep, like a knife slipped between ribs. James, my sweet boy, just chuckled, blind to the barb, his arm around her like she was his whole world. I swallowed the sting, telling myself it was just a bad first impression, that she'd warm up to me. But Megan's visits only sharpened her attacks. Every time she came over, she'd find something new to criticize. She'd pick up my chipped coffee mug and sigh. "Eleanor, you deserve better than this dollar store stuff. Why not treat yourself?" Or she'd glance at my thrift store sweater and say, "You're not that old to be dressing like this, are you?" Each remark was a splinter under my skin, chipping away at my confidence. James, who used to call me just to chat about his day, started parroting her. At a family dinner, as I served my homemade pot roast, he pushed his plate away and said, "Mom, Megan's got a point. This house is a lot to manage alone. Ever thought about something smaller?" His voice was soft, but it carried her tone, like he was reciting lines she'd fed him. I stared at him, my heart twisting, and said, "This is my home, James. It's where your father and I built our life." He looked away, unwilling to meet my eyes. Megan's tactics grew bolder over time. She'd show up uninvited, her SUV screeching into my driveway, and start rearranging my furniture, claiming she was helping me declutter. One sweltering afternoon, as I polished my bookshelf, She sprawled on my couch and said, "Eleanor, a retirement community would suit you so much better. Think about it, no more worrying about upkeep, just a cozy little place with people your age." Her smile was all teeth, like a wolf circling a lamb. I gripped my polishing cloth, my voice steady but cold. "This house is my sanctuary, Megan. It's where I raised James." She shrugged, undeterred. "James and I are starting a family soon. We need a place that fits us. You wouldn't want to stand in our way, would you?" Her words weren't a request, they were a demand, laced with a threat I couldn't ignore. The worst was watching James change. My son, who once spent weekends fixing my porch swing or laughing over old family photos, became a shadow of himself. Last 4th of July, at a neighborhood barbecue, he pulled me aside while Megan chatted with her parents, her laughter ringing false across the yard. "Mom, Megan's just looking out for you," he said, staring at his shoes. "A smaller place would be safer. Those stairs could be a problem." His words echoed her so perfectly it was like she'd rewired his soul. "James," I said, my voice cracking, "this house is all I have left of your father. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" He shifted, mumbling, "Sure, but we're just being practical." Practical. That word was a slap, more painful than any of Megan's insults, because it came from the boy I'd raised with love and sacrifice. By last spring, Megan's suggestions turned into outright pressure. At a tense dinner under my chandelier, she leaned across the table, her wineglass catching the light. "Eleanor, let's be honest. You can't keep up with this place. James and I found a gated retirement home, 24-hour care, social clubs, the works. You'd thrive there." Her voice was syrupy, but her eyes were hard, calculating. James nodded, his face blank. "It's for your own good, Mom." I felt like I was drowning, their words wrapping around me like chains. That's when I realized this wasn't about care, it was about control. They wanted my home, my memories, my life. They thought I was too weak to resist. But they were wrong. It wasn't until I overheard a conversation that laid their intentions bare, a moment that pushed me to uncover the truth they thought they could hide. The weight of Megan Carter's relentless insults and James's blind agreement had already worn me down, but it was a single overheard conversation that ripped the veil off their true intentions, exposing a betrayal so cold it chilled my bones. "I'm Eleanor Brooks. And for 2 years, I'd endured Megan's barbs about my thrift store clothes, my outdated furniture, and my so-called inability to manage my own home. Each visit was a calculated jab, each suggestion to move to a retirement community a step toward something darker. But I didn't see the full picture until a spring evening last year, when a phone call I wasn't meant to hear shattered any illusions I had left about my son and his wife. It was a warm April night, the kind where the Scottsdale breeze carried the scent of desert blooms through my open windows. Megan and James were over for dinner, and I'd stepped into the kitchen to refill the iced tea pitcher. As I reached for the lemons, I heard Megan's voice, low and sharp, from the living room. She thought I was out of earshot, her phone pressed to her ear. "If we can get Eleanor to sell this place, we're set," she whispered, her tone gleeful, predatory. "It's in a prime spot, and she's so clueless she'll think we're doing her a favor. We'll move in, flip it later for a fortune." My hand froze on the pitcher, the glass slipping in my grip. I leaned against the counter, heart pounding, as her words sank in like poison. She wasn't just after a better home for her and James, she saw my house, my sanctuary, as a ticket to erase their financial mess. I didn't confront her then. I couldn't. My legs trembled as I carried the pitcher back, forcing a smile while Megan hung up and flashed her usual fake grin. But that moment lit a fire in me, a need to know the truth. I called my old friend Clara, a real estate agent who'd known me since David and I bought our home decades ago. "Clara," I said, my voice shaking as I stood on my porch the next morning. "I need you to dig into James and Megan's situation. Something's not right." Clara, always sharp, didn't ask questions. Within days, she called me back, her voice heavy with concern. Eleanor, they're in deep trouble. They've missed payments on their leased cars, their apartment rent is overdue, and they're juggling credit card bills they can't cover. Your house is their way out." Her words were a punch to the gut, confirming what I'd feared. Megan wasn't just cruel, she was desperate, and James was letting her drag him into her scheme. The next clue came a month later, on a scorching June afternoon. I was watering my roses when I saw a sleek black sedan pull into my driveway. A man in a suit stepping out with a clipboard and a measuring tape. Megan trailed behind him, her sunglasses glinting as she pointed at my house. "The backyard's a good size," she said, loud enough for me to hear. "Perfect for a pool when we move in." The man nodded, jotting notes, his tape snapping against my fence like a whip. I stood frozen, my hose dripping onto my shoes, as the truth hit me. They were appraising my home without my permission, treating it like it was already theirs. "Megan," I called out, my voice sharper than I intended. "What's going on?" She spun around, her smile faltering for a split second. "Oh, Eleanor, just exploring options for you. This place is too much work for you, don't you think?" Her lie was as flimsy as tissue paper, but I played along, nodding, my mind racing. That night, I lay awake. The hum of my ceiling fan drowning out the silence, but not the rage building inside me. Megan's words, her smug confidence, her assumption that I was too weak to fight back, it was all a performance, a mask for her greed. And James, my boy, was complicit, letting her orchestrate this theft of my home, my memories. I thought of David, how we'd laughed in this house, planned our future, held each other through life's storms. They wanted to take that from me, to reduce my life to a transaction. But I wasn't the fragile old woman they thought. I had strength they couldn't imagine, secrets I'd kept for years. It was time to act. The next morning, I called Henry Walsh, my financial advisor, and set a plan in motion. But the real blow, the one that would break my heart, was still to come, a family meeting that would reveal just how far they were willing to go to strip me of everything. The sting of Megan Carter's calculated insults and the chilling truth of her scheme to seize my home had already cracked my heart. But nothing prepared me for the moment it shattered completely. After overhearing Megan's plan to sell my Scottsdale house and discovering their secret appraisal, I thought I'd seen the depths of their betrayal. But I was wrong. The real blow came during a so-called family meeting at my dining table, orchestrated with such cold precision it felt like a guillotine poised above my neck. That evening, 3 weeks before the gala at the Desert Rose, showed me just how far Megan and my son James were willing to go to strip me of everything I held dear. It was the moment I lost the son I'd raised, the moment my pain reached a depth I didn't know was possible. It was a humid August evening, the kind where the Arizona heat clung to your skin like regret. Megan and James arrived at my home with Megan's parents, Richard and Diane Carter, in tow, a perfectly staged ambush. Richard, a retired car dealer with a permanent scowl, sat at the head of my table like he owned it, while Diane, her lips pursed in judgment, eyed my faded wallpaper. Megan, in a tailored blazer that screamed money she didn't have, took charge. "Eleanor, we're here to talk about your future," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "This house is too much for you. It's time to make a responsible choice." I gripped my coffee mug, the one Megan had mocked months ago, and forced a calm reply. "My future is just fine right here, Megan. This is my home." She exchanged a glance with her mother, a silent signal that made my stomach churn. Richard leaned forward, his voice gruff. "Let's be practical, Eleanor. You're not getting any younger. A place with round-the-clock care would be safer. We've found a lovely retirement community, gated, with all the amenities." Diane chimed in, her tone patronizing. "You don't want to be a burden on James and Megan, do you? They're starting a family." The words hit like a slap, but it was James's silence that cut deeper. My son, sitting across from me, stared at his folded hands, his face a mask of detachment. "James," I said, my voice trembling, "do you agree with this?" Do you want me out of my own home? He shifted, his jaw tight, and muttered, Mom, it's for your own good. We just want what's best. His words were a betrayal wrapped in cowardice, echoing Megan's script so perfectly I could almost hear her voice behind his. Then Megan dropped the hammer. She slid a glossy brochure across the table, its cover showing smiling seniors by a pool. This place is perfect for you, Eleanor, she said, her smile sharp as a blade. But if you won't see reason, we might have to consider other options. Legal ones. My breath caught. What does that mean? I demanded, my heart pounding. Richard answered, his tone cold. If you can't make sound decisions, we could petition for guardianship. For your safety, of course. The threat hung in the air like smoke, suffocating me. I turned to James, my voice breaking. You'd let them do this? Declare your own mother incompetent? He looked away, his silence louder than any words. Diane added, It's about protecting you, Eleanor. You're not yourself anymore. That's when I knew. My own son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, who'd clung to me when David died, was willing to sacrifice me for Megan's greed. I excused myself, claiming I needed water, and stumbled to the kitchen, tears burning my eyes. Alone, I called my financial advisor, Henry Walsh, my voice barely a whisper. Henry, they're planning to take everything. I need you to dig deeper. He promised to investigate, but the real blow came the next day when Clara, my real estate friend, called with news that crushed what was left of my hope. Eleanor, she said, her voice heavy, James has been meeting with a lawyer specializing in elder guardianship. They're building a case to prove you're unfit to manage your affairs. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, the weight of his betrayal heavier than anything I'd ever carried. My son wasn't just complicit, he was an active player in a plot to rob me of my autonomy. But that pain, that unbearable grief, lit a spark of resolve. I wasn't done yet. The gala at the Desert Rose was coming, and with Henry's help, I'd make sure they faced the truth they thought they could bury. The betrayal of Megan Carter's calculated scheme and James's complicity had already broken my heart, but the family meeting where they threatened to declare me incompetent pushed me to a place of no return. After enduring 2 years of Megan's venomous insults and James's blind loyalty to her, I'd uncovered their plot to steal my Scottsdale home. The pain of my son's willingness to strip me of my autonomy was unbearable, but it ignited a fire I hadn't felt in years. At the Desert Rose Gala, where their greed had boiled over into public humiliation, I was done hiding. With Henry Walsh, my trusted financial advisor, by my side, I was ready to unveil a truth that would shatter their world as thoroughly as they'd tried to shatter mine. It was the night of the gala, the air thick with the scent of roses and champagne, the chandeliers casting golden light over 150 guests. I stood by the dessert table, my cane steady in my hand, my resolve steadier. Megan, in her glittering gown, had just demanded my house keys, her voice dripping with arrogance. James stood silent, his eyes fixed on the floor, as if he could wish me away. I'd had enough. I dialed Henry, my voice low but firm. Henry, it's time. Bring the documents to the Desert Rose, now. He didn't hesitate. I'm on my way, Eleanor. Stay strong. 30 minutes later, as the band played a soft jazz tune, Henry walked in, his briefcase a weapon of truth, his gray suit cutting through the crowd like a blade. The music stopped as Henry stepped to my side, his presence commanding silence. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice clear and professional. I'm here to address an urgent matter concerning Eleanor Brooks. The guests leaned forward, sensing something monumental. Megan's smirk faltered, her eyes darting to James, who looked like he'd been punched. Henry opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers, his gaze steady. For years, Eleanor has been quietly supporting James Brooks and Megan Carter, covering their rent, car payments, and credit card bills. She's kept their lives afloat, all while they mocked her as a frail old woman. A gasp rippled through the crowd, forks clattering against plates. Megan's face twisted in disbelief. "That's absurd," she spat, her voice shrill. "She's just a bookstore clerk living on scraps. She can't have money." Her desperation was palpable, her hands clutching her gown as if it could anchor her lies. James stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Mom, what's he talking about? You never told me—" I cut him off, my voice icy, steady, cutting through the room like a winter wind. "I never told you because I wanted to protect you, James. I paid for your apartment, your cars, your vacations, thinking you'd find your way, but you chose greed over gratitude. You chose her over me." My words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of a mother's broken heart. Henry held up a document, his tone unwavering. "Eleanor's financial support ends tonight. The payments for your lifestyle, including the deposit for this very gala, are canceled. You'll need to settle the bill before the night is over." The room seemed to hold its breath, the silence so thick it felt like a physical force. Megan staggered, her face pale, her voice a screech. "This is impossible. She's lying. She's just a pathetic old lady." But the guests weren't looking at me with pity anymore. They were staring at her, their whispers turning to murmurs of disbelief. James's knees buckled, his hands gripping a chair. "Mom," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You've been paying for everything, all this time?" His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw the boy I'd raised, lost in a sea of regret. But it was too late. "This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness," I said, my voice ringing with a strength I hadn't felt in years. "You thought you could bully me out of my home, but you didn't know who I really am." The guests' phones were out now, some recording, others texting, the moment already spreading like wildfire. Megan's parents, Richard and Diane, stood frozen at their table, their faces a mix of shock and shame. I turned to Henry, nodding. "Let's make it official." He pulled out another document, his voice steady. "Eleanor is also amending her estate plans. Her assets will no longer pass to James." A collective gasp echoed, and Megan let out a wail, collapsing into a chair, her perfect facade crumbling. But this was only the beginning. Their greed had sparked a fire they couldn't extinguish, and the real consequences were yet to come. As I walked toward the exit, Henry by my side, I knew the next battle would be in a courtroom, where their lies would face the full weight of the truth I'd been forced to wield. The revelation at the Desert Rose Gala, where I, Eleanor Brooks, exposed Megan Carter and James Brooks's greed with Henry Walsh's damning documents, was only the beginning of their reckoning. Their plan to steal my Scottsdale home had crumbled under the weight of my hidden truth, but Megan, ever the predator, wasn't done. She and James, desperate to salvage their shattered egos, launched a vicious counterattack, dragging me into a courtroom battle that would test my resolve like never before. They thought they could paint me as a senile old woman, unfit to control her own life. But they underestimated the strength I'd buried deep for decades. This wasn't just about my home anymore, it was about reclaiming my dignity, and I was ready to fight. 2 weeks after the gala, I sat in a sterile Scottsdale courthouse, the air heavy with the hum of fluorescent lights and the weight of betrayal. Megan had hired a slick lawyer, a man in a pinstripe suit who strutted like he'd already won. She'd spread rumors in our tight-knit community, whispering to neighbors that I'd lost my mind, that my outburst at the gala was proof I couldn't be trusted. James, my own son, backed her, his signature on a petition to declare me mentally incompetent, a document that felt like a knife twisted in my heart. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, peered over her glasses as Megan's lawyer began. "Your Honor," he said, his voice oily. "Eleanor Brooks's erratic behavior at her son's anniversary gala shows she's unfit to manage her affairs. We seek guardianship to protect her." Protect me? The lie was so bold it burned. Henry Walsh, my rock through this storm, stood beside me, his briefcase packed with evidence that would bury their case. "Your Honor," he countered, his tone steady but sharp, "Eleanor Brooks is not only competent, but has been the victim of a calculated scheme by Megan Carter and James Brooks. He slid a folder across the bench, his eyes never leaving the judge. These recordings capture Megan planning to seize Eleanor's home, believing her to be a vulnerable widow. The courtroom speakers crackled as my voice recorder, hidden in my purse during that fateful family meeting, played Megan's words. "She's so clueless she'll think we're doing her a favor." Gasps echoed from the gallery, where a few neighbors had come, their faces shifting from pity to shock. Henry wasn't done. He presented bank statements showing years of my secret support payments that kept James and Megan's lavish lifestyle afloat while they mocked my thrift store sweaters. "Eleanor's generosity was met with greed," he said, his voice rising. "They conspired to declare her incompetent to steal her property." Megan's face crumpled, her hands twisting her scarf as she hissed at James, "Do something." But James just sat there, his head bowed, his silence louder than any defense. I stood, my cane steady, my voice cutting through the room. "Your Honor, I've spent my life protecting my son, but I won't let him and his wife rob me of my home or my dignity. I'm not the frail old woman they think." The judge's eyes softened, a flicker of respect crossing her face. Megan's lawyer scrambled, his voice faltering. "This is just a misunderstanding, Your Honor. They were concerned for her safety." But the judge wasn't buying it. She leaned forward, her tone icy. "Concern doesn't sound like threats of guardianship or secret appraisals of someone's home." She banged her gavel, her ruling swift and merciless. "The petition is dismissed. Megan Carter and James Brooks are ordered to pay Eleanor's legal fees for this frivolous claim." The gallery erupted in murmurs, some clapping, others whispering as Megan let out a strangled sob. Her composure shattered like glass. James's eyes met mine, pleading, but I turned away. The boy I'd raised was gone, replaced by a man who'd chosen greed over love. The courtroom victory was bittersweet, the weight of my son's betrayal still heavy on my heart. As Henry and I walked out, the Arizona sun blazing overhead, I felt a strange mix of triumph and grief. I'd won, but at what cost? My neighbors, once swayed by Megan's lies, now approached with apologies, their voices soft with shame. But the battle wasn't over. Megan's desperation would push her to new lows, and the consequences of their actions were about to crash down like a desert storm, reshaping their lives and mine forever. The courtroom victory, where Henry Walsh and I dismantled Megan Carter and James Brooks's cruel attempt to declare me incompetent, was a triumph of justice. But it left a hollow ache in my chest. I'm Eleanor Brooks, a 70-year-old widow who'd faced years of Megan's venomous manipulation and James's betrayal, only to fight back with a truth they never saw coming. The gala at the Desert Rose had exposed their greed, and the Scottsdale courthouse had sealed their fate. But the aftermath was a storm of consequences that reshaped their lives and mine. As I walked away from that courtroom, the Arizona sun burning overhead, I felt the weight of what I'd lost: my son, my trust, but also the spark of something new, a purpose born from pain. The fallout was swift, brutal, and undeniable, and it taught me lessons I'd carry forever. Within weeks, Megan and James's carefully curated world collapsed. Their leased cars were repossessed, their upscale apartment evicted them, and they were forced to move in with Megan's parents, Richard and Diane, in a cramped condo on the edge of Phoenix. I heard from neighbors that Megan's designer wardrobe was sold at consignment shops, her once flawless makeup now smudged by tears of desperation. James lost his job at the bank, his reputation tarnished when the viral videos from the gala spread across social media, showing the world their true colors. "How could you let this happen?" Megan screamed at him one evening, her voice carrying through their condo's thin walls, according to a mutual friend. James, ever the shadow of her ambition, just mumbled, "I didn't know, Megan. I didn't know." But he did know he'd chosen her lies over his mother's love, and now they were paying the price. Meanwhile, I turned my pain into action. With Henry's guidance, I founded the Silver Dignity Foundation, a nonprofit to protect seniors from family abuse. My Scottsdale home, once a target of Megan's greed, became a sanctuary again, its rooms now hosting support groups for others like me. I poured my heart into writing a book, Unbroken Spirit, sharing my story to inspire those silenced by family betrayal. It climbed bestseller lists, not for profit but to fund the foundation's work. Sophie Miller, my 8-year-old niece and a teacher with a heart as warm as the desert sun, became my closest ally. One evening, as we sipped tea on my porch, she took my hand, her eyes shining with tears. "Aunt Eleanor, you've shown me what family really means," she said. "It's not about money or houses, it's about respect, about standing up for what's right." Her words were a balm, a reminder that not all family was lost to greed. The community's response was overwhelming. Neighbors who'd once believed Megan's lies now stopped by with homemade pies and apologies, their voices soft with regret. "We had no idea," one said, shaking her head. "You're stronger than any of us knew." Their support fueled my resolve, but the pain of James's silence lingered. He sent one text, a week after the trial. "Mom, I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but I couldn't respond. His apology felt hollow, a plea born of desperation, not remorse. Megan, meanwhile, left voicemails begging for help, her voice cracking. "Eleanor, we're drowning. You can't do this to us." But I could, and I did. I'd learned that enabling their greed only deepened their corruption. The lessons were hard-won but clear. I'd spent years shielding James from consequences, thinking love meant sacrifice, but I'd been wrong. Love doesn't mean letting others trample your dignity. It means setting boundaries, even when it hurts. It means choosing yourself when those you love choose to hurt you. My work with Silver Dignity showed me I wasn't alone. Countless seniors shared stories of manipulation, their voices trembling as they reclaimed their strength. One woman, a 5-year-old from Tucson, hugged me after a workshop, whispering, "You gave me the courage to say no to my kids." Her words echoed in my heart, a testament to the purpose I'd found. As I stood on my porch, watching the desert sunset paint the sky in hues of fire, I knew the fight wasn't over. Megan's desperation would push her to new lows, and the path ahead would demand every ounce of my resolve. But I was ready to share my story with the world, to turn my pain into a beacon for others, and to show that dignity, at any age, is worth fighting for. The storm of Megan Carter and James Brooks's betrayal, the courtroom battle, and the aftermath that reshaped our lives left me, Eleanor Brooks, standing stronger than ever, but with a heart forever marked by loss. As I sit on my Scottsdale porch, the desert stars flickering above, I'm no longer the woman who endured years of manipulation in silence. My journey from Megan's vicious demands to the shattering truth I unveiled, with Henry Walsh's help, taught me lessons I now carry like a shield. To every senior listening, hear this. Your dignity is not negotiable, no matter your age. If family pressures you to give up what's yours, your home, your savings, your independence, set boundaries, say no, even when it hurts. Protect your assets by documenting everything. A trusted advisor like Henry can be your lifeline. Seek support groups like my Silver Dignity Foundation exist to lift you up when family lets you down. I learned this the hard way, watching my son choose greed over love. But it's never too late to reclaim your worth. You are not a burden. You are a person, deserving of respect. This pain, though deep, gave me purpose. My book, my foundation, and Sophie Miller's unwavering support remind me that family is built on respect, not obligation. To those facing similar battles, know you're not alone. Your story matters. Share it with me, quietly, in the comments on the Unwanted Revenge. If my journey touched you, leave a like. It's a small nod to the strength we share. Subscribe to hear more stories of courage, of standing tall against betrayal. Let's keep this conversation alive, together, under the stars.